Good morning. It's Friday, April 22nd for the daily weather briefing for today, and we've got quite a few things to talk about. And let's get right into it and let's look at the current weather for today across the United States. And as we can see, a storm system is now beginning to approach the western portion of the United States. Temperatures are generally mild across the United States. For this time of year, a little bit warmer across the southeastern portion and southwestern portion, but it's not too bad. But mostly just, most of the disturbed weather is along the west coast and the east coast today, but a large area across the central Intermountain West, the Central Plains, and even to a little bit in the Midwest. It's cleared up quite a bit. A lot of scattered showers and thunderstorms across the East Coast, with some heavier activity across Georgia and into the Gulf of Mexico, where we'll possibly see some severe weather later today. Looking at the watch warning map, not a lot going on for what you expect for most of April. Usually we see a lot more activity at this time, and I expect next week we'll see a lot more happening as we move into a stormier weather pattern. But looking at the west here, a lot of high wind advisories and high wind watches in effect, and a red flag advisory, a red flag warning in effect for northern Arizona. Some winter weather advisories in effect for portions of northern California as that storm system comes in off the west coast here. We have a frost advisory for Wisconsin, and then some flash flood watches and advisories over the southeastern portion of Texas and Louisiana as they continue to, deal with the flooding problems that have been there for the heavy rains for the last couple of weeks. Moving into the satellite picture at 17Z, again, you can see a large area across the Intermountain West and Central Plains that are pretty clear today. It's a beautiful day. But we do have a strong storm system pushing on to the west coast, so there'll be a lot of activity along Washington down towards California. And most of the weather should stay north of Los Angeles, so I don't expect a lot of shower activity into that area, but there may be some sprinkles or some light showers that move in there later today, but most of it will be heavier stuff will stay north of there and into Nevada and Utah and Idaho. Looking on the east side, there's some pretty low clouds here and some fog and drizzle out here, but it's almost too light to pick up at this point in time across Iowa and Missouri. A lot of moisture left over from the upper level low that's been slowly progressing across the United States. But basically, from Michigan down to Alabama eastward is where all the activity will be today. Again, this is kind of more of a late spring and early summer type storm system, not very well organized, not very potent, but a lot of showers and thunderstorm activity associated with it, and we'll see some stronger weather later today. Looking at the current radar, again, looking on the west side of the coast, we do see a lot of precipitation coming in, some pretty heavy rain north of San Francisco and in the San Francisco area, and then there's kind of a break across Oregon, and then there's more precipitation in Washington at this point. This will be increasing throughout the day, and they're going to see a period of wet weather moving into the northwestern portion of the United States over the next week or so. And then again, no precipitation across the central heartland, but a lot of the precipitation now along the east coast. Most of the heaviest activity right now is in Georgia and along the panhandle of Florida here with some scattered showers and thunderstorms. That'll be increasing through the day. And we have some pretty potent little storms forming out here in South Carolina and North Carolina, so we'll have to watch those a little bit later. There's also a special marine warning out in effect out here out by Maryland and the Delmarva area with some strong thunderstorms out there, but then light general precipitation across the northeast. Now let's move into the severe weather analysis. Looking at yesterday's severe weather, not a lot happening. Again, you'd sit here and wonder, okay, we're in the middle of April, and the latter part of April, and we're not getting much severe weather. This will be changing next week, but it's kind of a good thing. We don't have a lot of bad, damaging weather happening right now. We did have some wind reports across Washington, Indiana, and Texas, with some hail reports associated with the storm system, that upper level low that was moving across Illinois yesterday. That's a pretty strong, interesting storm cells on radar across Illinois yesterday, showing some pretty good rotation, but nothing really transpired from it. And looking at today's severe weather outlook, we've got a general area of thunderstorms across the northwest and also in New Mexico. We got a little bit of a southerly flow beginning to show up here as high pressure moves down the central plains. Some moisture pulling up into portions of New Mexico out of Mexico and into Colorado. So we'll see some scattered thunderstorms there, which are good. Um, and then across the eastern portion of the United States, there's a risk of marginal risk of severe weather all the way from Cincinnati to Atlanta down towards just north of the panhandle of Florida there. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I think this area will probably be lowered here later today, and they'll be shifted a little bit more towards the east. I think the front's moving a little bit faster than before as the storm system's moving on to the west coast here. So I don't expect a lot of severe weather today. It's going to be pretty low end type stuff. We might see some pretty potent storms though pop up across North and South Dakota. Excuse me, North and South Carolina and into Georgia. I think that's where probably we'll have a better risk for some severe weather, and maybe down here along the panhandle in Florida and so forth. So I think this area will be shifted a little bit more towards the east. Now, I want to move on to next week, and again, there's a lot of people out there talking about next week and all excited about the severe weather event. I will say that the models are not solid on these. We do know that there's some deep storm systems that are coming out. This high pressure system that's going to be sitting over the southeastern United States is not going to budge much. So a lot of these storm systems are going to be pulling out of the southwest, will strengthen, but they'll rapidly weaken as they move towards the Midwest. So it's going to be interesting to see how this transpires. I just don't think we need to be, jumping on it's Armageddon all of a sudden on these severe weather events. It's something that we definitely need to keep an eye on. It is the latter part of August. This tends to be a very active time of the year, and we just need to be aware of that. So looking at day 3, there is a slight risk of severe thunderstorms now forecasted by SPC from Des Moines to Topeka all the way to Oklahoma. I think looking at the models today, that's a good risk put in place. We might see an enhanced risk later on as this low pressure system, as we look at, will be a little bit more tighter, and I expected that. The model's coming that way in these runs, but I think that's good. We might see enhanced. We'll have to keep an eye on that. Now, the big day that everybody's talking about is day 5, where we have a 30% chance for severe weather across portions of Kansas, a good portion of Oklahoma, and just north of Dallas here. It's interesting looking at the severe weather parameters on day 5. Things are not lining up just right. There is a lot of instability there, but a lot of the shear is actually going to be along the warm front, which is here in Kansas and Missouri. So this may be changing down the road, and I expect that. I think there'll definitely be severe weather that day. Whether it's as potent, I don't know. We'll have to keep an eye on that. What I am a little surprised of is the severe weather outlook for day 6, and I really think this one is kind of being underdone a little bit. Right now they have a 15% chance, but I would expect over time that this will probably be increased in this area to a 30% down the road. As the models are showing a pretty potent little storm. But again, the models are all over the place, and you can't really make good judgments. And basically, I think SPC is just trying to give a serious point here that next week weather's going to become a little bit more organized. Severe weather will become a lot more organized than what we've seen over the last several severe weather events that we've had over the last few weeks. Actually, the last couple of months. So I think people just need to be aware that we're going into a more active and stormier pattern. So I think SPC is doing a good job of just making people aware of that. Let's look at the aviation weather real quick. Again, not a lot of convective activities, some scattered convective activity along the east coast and down into the panhandle of Florida, and then expect thunderstorms to rebuild across Indiana, Illinois, all the way down to the Gulf Coast and across Florida later today. No turbulence segments currently in effect, and then there's no icing segments in effect. Looking at the winds aloft, starting at 5,000 feet at 18Z, a nice little southerly flow coming into the southwest here ahead of that upper level low, so we might see some moisture pop in there later today. But a strong, Pacific jet coming off the Pacific here. It's going to be pushing a lot of moisture in California. If you look on the east coast here associated with this storm system, really there's not a real strong low-level jet here for any kind of severe weather. But if there's anything, there might be some feeding of some storms here along the east coast here that we might become a little bit more potent. We talked about that we might see some stronger storms later today in that area. Looking at the winds at 10,000 feet, you can see a very strong Pacific jet moving into this west here, with winds all the way up to 50 to 60 knots at 10,000 feet. Winds lighten up quite a bit here across the eastern portion of the United States, with winds between 30 and 40 knots ahead of that weak storm system coming out of the Midwest there. Again, strong jet associated with the storm system coming across the west here. Winds all the way up to about 105 to 110 knots at 18,000 feet. And a strong polar jet up to the north with a strong low pressure system across the Hudson Bay there in Canada. This will pick up and quickly move this storm system that's in the Midwest out to sea. But winds generally associated with this storm system are pretty weak at this level. We do have some, we might see some more, again, we might see some more better organized storms here in Virginia, North and South Carolina as we look at the upper level winds here. And looking at the 30,000 feet, again, strong jet around this low pressure system. So we'll see this low dig a little bit more further to the south, I expect. We also have this little low here along the spur of Baja Peninsula here, which will be pumping some moisture out of Mexico into the southwest here. So we may see some thunderstorms increase under this high pressure system later today. And then this upper level low that's sitting over Indiana, we do have some good little outflow here across Ohio and so forth. And as this transpires to the east, we'll see some of those thunderstorms enhanced by that, I believe, later today. All right, so let's take a look at the 5-day outlook here, and we can see this strong low pressure system moving into the west here, and a weak low off of Baja, which will feed moisture out of the south eastern Pacific into that storm system. It moves into the Intermountain West, so we'll see a lot of precipitation, as we can see, breaking out across the west here with some snow in the higher mountain regions, which is good. They need that, especially reducing the fire danger. But high pressure across the really the whole inner tier of the central portion of the United States dominates the weather, and we'll begin to see temperatures on the increase as time goes on. This low pressure in the upper Midwest will move off towards the east pretty rapidly. And we'll see scattered showers and thunderstorms mostly across the east, but nothing too severe or crazy at this point. I think the GFS is wrong here on Saturday. I think this low will be actually a little bit further to the south. It's been trending more towards the south as time goes on, but it's going to be a potent little low pressure system out here, upper level low. We'll see a lot of snow in the upper level portions of the mountains, and some pretty strong winds, and so I think we'll get some bands of strong thunderstorms out here in Utah and Colorado and northern Arizona, and maybe even to New Mexico as this low begins to pull out into the Central Plains and so forth. If we look at the surface chart, we do have a pretty potent upper level low out here. Again, they're still putting this upper level low out here. The charts are in Montana and Wyoming. I think it's going to be a little bit further to the south here in Colorado is where I believe it's going to be forming. But either way, there'll be a dry line down here, and it'll be remaining pretty dry. And the reason why I believe that is because this high pressure system is going to be blocking any inflow off the Gulf of Mexico. So most of the moisture will be coming over the mountains of Mexico and off the Pacific, South Pacific, and not a lot of that'll be wrung out quite a bit before it actually can get swept up into the storm here. But it will be a very windy period of time, and people need to be alert to that fact that winds will be increasing quite a bit, between 30, 40, maybe even 50 miles an hour. Now looking at Sunday, I think this low will be, upper level low will be a little bit further to the south. I believe it's going to be a lot more intense than what it's showing here. Looking at the surface chart, well, before we get that, we do have the next storm system, which again, the GFS is kind of weakening this one, making it more progressive. We'll have to see. We'll have to look at that, but I think it will be a little more stronger than what the GFS is showing here. But looking at the surface features, the storm system will be a lot stronger. I think it's going to be a little bit further to the south here. Moisture will be allowed to increase as time goes on as that high pressure system moves off to the east, but again, it's going to take some time, and that's going to be the limiting factor with the storm system. And that's something that we've been seeing this year. We've had some really strong upper level lows and surface lows come out of the Intermountain West very potent, but the moisture's been lacking behind, and that's the reason why I have not seen the rapid severe weather or the great severe weather events. And so I think that severe weather will be limited, but where thunderstorms can develop, they can become quite potent. And I would expect some tornadoes on Sunday, late Sunday afternoon, with some of these storms. The dynamics are closer to Nebraska and Kansas. I think is where we'll see some of that take place a little bit stronger than what's happening here. I don't know. We'll see as the day goes on. The models are not quite locking on to things quite well. Looking at Monday, the big storm system now is beginning to take shape across the Intermountain West here, and it's beginning to intensify. We have a surface low now that's beginning to form around Salt Lake City, but I think again this is going to be a little bit further to the south here near the Four Corners area. That low pressure system that was quite strong out here is now kind of broken apart here in the upper levels. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think it's going to be a little bit stronger out here in the upper Midwest. Might produce some isolated severe weather events, but we'll have to watch that. Surface low has dropped below 1,000, has risen above 1,000 millibars, but we have a new surface low that's going to be pulling out into the Central Plains here. We'll have to see how that transpires. But right now, at this point, what we've got going on here is we got a little bit of a different situation with this new storm system. Is the Gulf of Mexico is now open for business, and we've got more moisture coming out of Texas and Louisiana into Oklahoma. Now, kind of interesting, and they're painting a little bit of a surface low out here in Oklahoma on Monday, so we may have to watch that and look where dew points are. We might see some activity form a little bit later in the day. We'll have to see how the surface charts form on that. Looking at Tuesday, which is considered the big day, which is interesting because this low, the strongest dynamics are still back here in Arizona, New Mexico. Quite a defluence loft here across a large area in the Central Plains, so the defluency and the atmosphere is there for that for sure. The upper level of the surface feature is going to be, I think it's going to be a little bit further to the south and a little more deeper around the panhandle areas. It's interesting. Yesterday they had the surface low way up here. Now it's bringing a little bit further to the south. I think it's going to be a little bit more further to the south. I think it's going to be around the panhandle areas. And it's going to be a little more intense. And that's the reason why we have that potential for a little bit more greater severe weather risk. Now, where it's going to be key is where that warm front, the dry line, and the cold front line up, and determining that area where the severe weather could take place on Tuesday. Again, when I looked at the surface reflections, looking at Cape values, shear, and so forth, things were not quite lining. Is it going to be unstable? According to the charts, they've got Cape values pushing up to about 5,000 joules per kilogram and lifted indices of -13 in central Oklahoma. If that's the case, yes, the atmosphere will be quite explosive, but there might be a big enough cap that it keeps things quiet for a period of time. So we'll have to watch and see how this all takes place. And really, I don't want to jump on anything until we get to that day, because there's just too much up in the air to sit there and say, yeah, there's going to be Armageddon all over. People get crazy on that stuff, and I don't think we need to do that at this point. Looking at Wednesday now, this is interesting because Wednesday they have a slight risk, or have a 15% out here, and I think this is going to be greater. I think we're looking at the if this verifies here, this is a very potent upper level, mid-level reflection and a very potent surface reflection vertically stacked. And I think we have a greater risk of severe weather, more potent organized severe weather event on Wednesday than on Tuesday. But again, the models are flip-flopping all over the place. And as you can see here, back here on the west, we have a new storm system that's going to be coming a little bit further to the south. So I think southern portions of California will see some rain coming in later with this next storm that comes off the Pacific, and we'll have to watch that one and see what it does towards the latter part of the week. Looking at the surface feature, though, the 990 surface, I think this is actually going to be deeper than this. Moving into the central portion of the United States, I think we'll have plenty of time for moisture to get ahead of this storm system, so we might have some morning convection going on Wednesday. But again, Tuesday and Wednesday are kind of the high points, and we need to keep an eye on that and see how things formulate at that point. So in summary, looking back, the southwestern portion of the United States is going to remain dry, but I think it's going to cool down. We're going to see some cooler temperatures coming in the next several days. It's been a little bit above normal. The southeast, I think it's going to heat up, and it's going to give a small taste of summer this next week. The Intermountain West and the Central Plains get active, and we do have a couple of days of potential organized severe weather events next week. Looking right now, anything from Sunday on has the day for some potential organized severe weather. So we'll keep you advised, and we'll have Saturday and Sunday off this week, but starting Monday we will do another daily weather briefing and follow that throughout every day. We also, on active days, if it's a moderate risk or higher, and maybe even an enhanced risk or higher, we will do live streaming of those particular severe weather events. So we'll keep you advised. We thank you for watching and have a great day.